All right. So these are the questions. Should society trends, pressures influence? The fact is that it will. The question is that how do you how do you how do you make sure you're not soaking in the wrong information? How do you make sure you're not being influenced? That your ability to discern, interpret, right? Your ability to say, okay, this is a situation I'm willing to go into. I'm taking a risk. But why call it a risk? Why not? You're making a move of faith. It's always going to be a move of faith. What's it different? It's different. It has different effects on our brain. Okay? When you say you're making a move of faith or you're taking a risk, it has two different effects on our brain. There's some people that tend to be attracted to calling a risk. It's because these are people that think they can put everything down on paper. They are very analytical and they think they can figure it all out. Irony is a lie. You will never figure it all out. But when we say it's a move of faith, there's a level of trust that comes into that. It's trust as against fear, right? It's faith as against fear. One creates better outcomes overall. And even when you have to react to crisis in life, you will be able to react a little bit better. It shouldn't though, but people have different needs that their marriages and relationship are not providing, so they overstretch. Yep. Let's go on to the next question. We got three more. Okay, three more questions that I'm asking. If you're watching this as a replay later, feel free to use the comment area to answer. Okay. I would love to see what your thoughts are around this story. All right, so we have this question here. In Shirley Strawberry's situation, what lessons do you think can be learned about evaluating potential partners? What are the questions we can learn here? If you were 58 years old, and you have a Steve Harvey, shout out to Pink Book Lesson. She said he's a terrible advisor. Well, I can't use one case to determine that, okay? People have stories. Just because somebody gave you a good advice doesn't mean you won't go through life, okay? Right? But what can we learn from it, right? We can guarantee ourselves to learn some lessons today just by asking these questions, right? What can we learn from it, right? If a person has a certain type of past, criminal past, yeah, I'm trying to be careful because we all need second chances, we all need second chances. Listen, about 2 years ago, I wouldn't even give this advice, but if you're a man or a woman of certain age, I'm not talking about 24, 25, 26, okay? If you're less than 30 years of age, you should be able to see enough. You should be working on yourself. You should be able to see enough to know if somebody is moving funny or not, okay? They don't have that much experience. They will tell on themselves if you're paying attention, okay? But if you're a man or woman of a certain age, what I mean by that is you're going above 40, okay? I will have to agree with that too. Background check, okay? It's not a bad thing, okay? At the very minimum, you should at least Google the name and all the aliases of this person, okay? No, don't go in their phone. I'm talking about what you can see publicly. And you should they should be okay with, hey, let's do background check together. I want you to know everything about me, but I want to know everything about you, okay? And background check will usually, when somebody is participating in bad behavior, they won't want you to do background check. And at that point in time, you probably should pay attention, right? All right. I do still think background check will do very little of the check you need to be doing, right? But there's a fine line between check and always being on the edge, what a lot of people consider masculine. There's a fine line, right? So how do we find a balance between the two? Again, self-work. Nothing beats self-work, okay? Now, Shirley Strawberry she might claim that, hey, I've done all the work. It's possible. You might have done the work and still fall into it. But before we argue that it works or not, make sure you do the self work. Just do the self work. Listen, you're not doing it for the other person or to find a husband. You're doing it for yourself. You're getting to know yourself, right? Your overall quality of life will be improved by constantly engaging in self work. Okay, self improvement, self development. Okay, and your self confidence will probably repel certain types of people. Okay, a guy who used to have a past criminal lifestyle and he's still in it, he won't be comfortable being around you. He just won't be comfortable. Now, if he's completely clean, he might get comfortable. He might actually feel blessed, and he will not want to do anything stupid to jeopardize what he has with you. But if you are low on confidence, people like Ernest will prey on that. They will take advantage of that. Okay. It's still allegations. All right. I think she got carried away with her age and rushed. If you have been married once, no need to rush. Yeah, my wife says this all the time. If we ended up in divorce, she was never going to marry again. I've said that too, but I also know that when you get in this space of meeting somebody new that you're in love with, completely different rules comes in place. Okay, all type of different set of rules will come in place. So, gracious greatness, how far? I said my person is doing Jamb Thesis today. My brain cannot take it right now, but I will try to watch replay. I hear you. Yeah, it's a lot. It's easier said than done, but it gets easier if you understand that it's reps. One concept at a time. Soak yourself, immerse yourself in this stuff, and then eventually you will start to hear patterns in the kind of things I'm saying. At that point, you're like, oh, it becomes natural. It feels like a second nature, just a natural thing, right? Instead of trying to cram it. Please do not try to cram anything. Here's my next question. Wait, before I jump into the next question, let me see what D said. D said, my parents have been married for 32 years and they said same as you and your wife. Oh, that's awesome. God bless their heart. Are there any warning signs or red flags that you think everyone should be aware of when vetting potential partners? Well, I already said it. If somebody has high taste, high taste, and they have a business, security business, all this type of small business that is probably not bringing in no more than $200,000 in a year. At most, tops $300,000 revenue net, maybe $100,000 a year, and they are carrying Gucci bag and all on a consistent basis. They're replacing this type of lifestyle, Lamborghini, all this kind of stuff. It's a red flag. Red flag doesn't mean you should quit. It means you should probably pay a little bit extra attention. Hey, tell me a little bit about your business. That's how you're paying for all this stuff? No, you're a man or woman of a certain age. It's okay if you ask certain questions, okay? It's the way you ask the questions that may be problematic. If you're asking yes or no questions, that means you are not aware, okay? It should be open-ended questions. Questions like, tell me more about this business. Right? Don't say, so how much does your business make per year? Yeah, that question says you're already on the edge. They probably will respond negatively. But say, tell me more about your business. Listen, babe, I'm trying to start my own business. Is there any way you can help? Well, someone like Ernest will say, I can help. How much money you got? Pay me $10,000 for business coaching. Right? But ask open-ended questions that will instigate more conversations. And if you notice that they are actively concealing, they're hiding details, that's not just a red flag. That's like, whoa. Yeah, that's emergency. You know what I mean? So the second part of the question is, how do you personally assess compatibility and long-term potential? Listen, man, it needs to feel natural. Somebody said, but natural. Yes, actually it's easier said than done. Okay, I can bet my monthly livelihood that it never felt natural for Shirley Strawberry. She always knew that but what can I do? But she don't enter one chance. If you are having moments when you feel like you entered one chance, man or woman, yeah, it doesn't mean it's the other person's fault, but there's something about the dynamic of that relationship that just won't work out. Okay, it could be because they're a scam artist. It could be because you have issues around confidence, low self-esteem, and it's going to backfire and destroy that relationship just as good as a situation where somebody's been arrested for $1 million fraud. Okay, so if you notice here, it's not about earnest, it's about the romantic relationship you're trying to build. It needs to feel natural. You need to feel like, where have you been all my life? So that is something that's very subjective, is vague. It's not 5 million naira you must have in your account. That's a stupid advice. Okay, even people that are gold diggers, they don't care about feeling natural. They are always looking for ways to take from you. They are often more focused on take. They claim is give and take, but they are focused on the take part of things. They're always looking to take from you, or it feels like they're always taking from you. It feels like an abuse on your end. At that point in time, you don't need any kind of analytical, pragmatic, discrete number, right? To be able to tell. You don't need that. You just know that let me take my time. Maybe just taking your time will give you better clarity, right? But it's a feeling, okay? When you're able to rest and say, I feel comfortable, I'm vulnerable, I feel safe enough to be vulnerable. That's what you're looking out for, okay? And then you have compatibility. But compatibility also can be a moving target. Just keep an eye out for that. Last but not least, we're exactly at about 2 hours. Last but not least, so it's a question for you, but as I don't see much in the chat, I see enough, by the way, but I'm chiming in just so we can learn all the lessons in this story without making it about them, okay? What advice would you give someone who feels uncertain about their ability to vet people properly for a quality romantic relationship and marriage? Does that sound like low confidence, low self-esteem? Is that sounding like that? Yeah. The second part says, how can they develop the necessary skills and wisdom? Grace gonna say, what's dumb? It was the end of wisdom. YouTube is cutting the comment out. That's why there's a limit to the number of characters, right? How can they develop the necessary skills and wisdom? This is a good question, you know, and I want to make sure that you walk away with something tangible today, you know. But let me just say this really quickly, okay? Remember, okay, all of this at the end of the day is opinions, okay? Opinions. Personal story. This was basically a personal story of Shirley Strawberry and Ernest William and Erica Kings, right? This, this is all personal opinions, including my personal opinion. My personal opinion is also influenced by, I'm always in this kind of conversations, you know, obviously as an authority expert around this conversation, but I always remind you that I want it to make sense to you. If it doesn't make sense to you, you cast it to the side. You feel me? Especially if you've already figured things out and everything you're doing is working out for you, you know. Thank you, Jerry, my sister, Gorex. All right. Well, a couple of things I wanted to share with you before we end this session, okay? Relationship vetting discernment is a complex thing, okay? But what makes it complex is the fact that it needs to be simple, but our complex brain needs to hear it as if we don't hear terminologies and people throwing terminologies at us, psychoscientific terminology, sometimes we don't engage. We think our brain is so complex, it needs it to be complex for us to value it. The same reason why the scripture talks about the prophet in his own town, something like that. In his own, it's not valued. Okay, same reason. Okay, it's like you already know the answer, but you need it to sound more complicated before you can value it. That's something you need to pay attention to, right? So even though there's complexities around vetting and stuff like that, remember what I told you. You need to feel natural. Now, if you need to make sure of anything else beyond that, all that work needs to go into your self-esteem, self-confidence, self-improvement is what you do towards that. Okay, how do you do that? Hey, filter the kind of content you're consuming. Okay, you need to, faith comes by hearing, so does fear. Okay, so wherever you're feeding yourself, the kind of story, it becomes the kind of story you tell yourself, becomes your reality. Feel me? Okay, so there's enough there when it comes to the complexities. The other thing I want to talk about is age and wisdom. Okay, there is a correlation between age and wisdom. Okay, but like I said earlier, there's also something we call the bell curve. Right, this curve right here, you need to pay attention that the context matters. Okay, you get to a point you stop learning, just naturally, you just stop learning. You need to pay attention to that. Okay, you stop learning, you might want to correlate that with pride, right? Or you're busy with life, or you do what you do best, right? And you're very good at it, and that starts to build some blind spot, and sometimes crisis will come from that. But then if you are already aware of this part of our nature, then you just simply say, hey, let me respond accordingly. Okay, thank you, Natu. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Natu, for the super chat. We will dance in a few minutes here. All right, so that's one thing right there. Okay, all right, then your experiences, I always say experience is the best teacher, right? But not everyone learns from the experience. Okay, sometimes experiences become trauma for people. Okay, meaning it creates potential fear. So when you're operating from a place of fear, absolutely nothing good comes out of that. Okay, some people take fear and say, well, I have fear of this, I'm aware, but I avoid this, that's not my cup of tea, right? And some people will take fear and say, they will basically start shooting themselves on the legs, and it takes over their whole human experience, right? And that's something you want to watch out for. Okay, and it also affect your decision making. Okay, you make decision from a place of fear, right? You need both. You do need to have some kind of fear when that, but not fear in that way, as in like that there's a risk you're taking. You want to assess your risk when you're taking action. So for example, I don't want you to jump out into the dating marketing scene at the age of 58 and just pick any man with salt and pepper on his chin, and then you're like, oh, he's a fine man, he has a limousine company, and that is it. No, you need to pay attention. If you feel safe and you feel secure and all this kind of stuff, there's a good chance that something is right. But if you have questions to the point that you're now removing his name from your house before you sell the house, because she did that. That's part of the story I heard somewhere, that she actually did a quit claim deed. I think she mentioned it earlier. Took his name out of a house in order to sell the house. When you start to move a certain way, when you start to say things to yourself like, hey, make sure you have your own money, right? When people start advising you that you should have Vex money and you can relate with Vex money, there are certain types of wife that can't relate with Vex money. They just can't relate. Like, Vex money, that's a lot of work. I have to start hiding money. Why are they single? You think they are just perfect? No, they're not perfect. It's because they feel so safe inside of the marriage. So there's no need. They can't relate with Joro Lumofin, right? But if you can relate, especially with that kind of advice, especially with respect to your own husband, that's a red flag. And that red flag is not just on your partner, it's on you as well. That may just be trauma speaking. It's something you need to pay attention to. Okay?